Jesse thundered into the house, panicked, angry. He stopped short at the living room threshold when he saw Grant, dressed in his RCMP uniform, standing in front of the door that led out to the deck with his arms crossed, barring it. Hannah and Brant sat on the tattered red couch, wearing bathrobes covered in blankets, warming in front of the fire. Gina had made cocoa for them and was drinking hers as she leaned against the wall near the largest window. She wore Jesse's navy bathrobe over her wet t-shirt and jeans. "Is Bran okay?" Jesse asked. "I don't think either of them are okay," Gina said. Jesse's gaze flickered back to Grant. I phoned Grant and asked him to stay," Gina explained, "at least until you arrived. I wasn't sure I could handle Bran alone. Once I brought him in front of the river, he kept trying to leave the house." "It's okay, I understand." Then, to Grant, he said, "I appreciate it." Grant nodded, but his face was steely. He looked over Jesse rather than at him. Jesse went to his children, but Hannah wouldn't look at him. Bran tentatively licked the miniature marshmallows floating on his mug as if trying to figure out what they were. He ate one, rolling it around his mouth, and looked surprised. "Have you found out what the hell happened?" Jesse asked Gina. "I figured I should wait for you. Hannah hasn't been communicated." Hannah glared at Gina briefly, then drank from her mug, ignoring them both. Jesse squatted next to her, forcing her to look at him. "The nurse who called said you kidnapped Bran from the hospital. Then Gina phoned to tell me you took him into the river. I can't kidnap my own brother. You can't just take him out of the hospital. That's bullshit." But Hannah glanced at Grant as if she feared arrest. "No, that's for Bran's protection," Jesse told her. "I shouldn't have to point that out to you, especially now. Gina said he could have drowned." Hannah pulled her robe closed at the neck. "Bran wanted to go to the river, that's all. So I took him, then he slipped. No big deal." Gina put her cup on the window ledge and sat on the chair opposite to Hannah. Jesse felt the heat of her body next to his and, aware Grant was watching, shifted away from her. Gina leaned towards the girl as she said, "Hannah, I saw you help Bran into the river." Jesus, Jesse said. "What were you thinking?" Hannah looked away from her father. "You wouldn't understand." "You're damn right I don't understand." Gina put her hand on Hannah's briefly to give her words weight. "Bran really could have died, Hannah. Do you understand that? He could have drowned or died from exposure. Well, he didn't." Bran slurped up the last of his cocoa and Hannah took the mug from his hand. Then she tucked the blanket around him. When Bran looked up at her, apparently confused by her actions, Jesse noticed that his son was weeping and yet seemed unaware of his own tears. Jesse ran a thumb over his son's cheek to remove a tear, and Bran wiped his face. He looked down on his wet palm, perplexed. "We should get him back to the hospital," Jesse said. "He's clearly out of it." Grant took off his cap and stepped forward. "I can drive him." He nodded at the side window, at his police car parked in his driveway across the road. "He won't hurt anyone," Hannah said. She looked pointedly at Gina. "We don't need your help, and he's not going back to the hospital." "Hannah, it's the best place for him right now," Jesse said. "You stuck him in that ward because you don't want to take care of him, just like you don't want to take care of Grandpa, just like you just want to sell this place and leave." Jesse clenched and then unclenched his teeth but didn't respond. Gina sat back. "Hannah, that's hardly fair. Why are you still here?" Hannah asked her. She turned her back on Gina as she helped Bran stand and led him up the stairs to his room. Jesse stood. "Are you getting him dressed?" he called after her. "He should rest," Hannah said. "He's exhausted." "But I'm taking him in." Jesse turned to Gina for confirmation. "They'll want him back immediately, right?" "Let her be for a while," Gina said. "He'll be easier to manage after a nap in any case." Grant took Gina's elbow to urge her up. "We should go," he said. "Allow them some privacy." "You go," she told him as she stood. "I'll head home in a few minutes." "I think Jesse and Hannah have this under control." "You know your job," she told him. "I know mine." Grant lowered his voice. "Is that really why you're here? Your job?" "Yes." but she was the first to look away. "I'm here for Hannah," she said. Grant held up both hands. "Fine." He turned back to Jesse. "If you do need help taking Bran in, give me a shout. But next time something like this happens, you find another social worker. Understand?" Jesse nodded but didn't make eye contact. "That's not your call," Gina told Grant. "Isn't it? I'm your husband." He put his cap back on and left by the deck entrance, closing the door a little too hard. Gina stood at the window, watching him stride up the driveway and across the road. Jesse joined her there, aware of her shoulder against his. "He knows," Jesse said. "He suspects." "So you haven't told him about us?" "No. Will you? You almost sound like you want me to." Jesse didn't say anything, just held her gaze as he waited on her response. Hannah came back downstairs and paused as she pointedly took in how close together her father and Gina stood. Then she headed for the kitchen. "Hannah, wait," Gina pleaded. "Sit, we've got to talk about this." Hannah wavered for a moment, then flopped on the couch, crossing her arms. She looked like a woman now, Jesse thought, but she was still so much the teen. Gina resumed her perch on the chair opposite Hannah. "What really happened out there?" Gina asked. "Did Bran talk you into taking him down to the river?" "No," Hannah paused. "Not exactly. Did Alex?" "No." "But he's been telling you stories, hasn't he?" Dennis Moses' stories, about the mystery in the river. Hannah stared past her, out the window at the river. "Bran believes his stories, and maybe you came to as well?" Gina asked. When Hannah still didn't respond, she said, "Brandon believes what he's experiencing is real. He knows it's real, with a level of conviction, of faith that the rest of us will likely never understand. That can make him very convincing. I've dealt with kids with similar psychosis over the years. Kids thinking they can control the weather or talk to spirits. I can see how you might be drawn into this world." "I didn't say I believed him. Then why did you take him to the river?" Jesse paused. "You weren't helping him to commit suicide." "No, God, no. I was trying to save him." "At least I thought I was." Hannah held her head in front of her hands. Hannah held her head in her hands. "For a while it all made sense. Now nothing does. I think I'm losing my mind." Gina came to sit beside her, reached out and smoothed her hair. "Anyone would feel unsettled in your situation." Hannah didn't pull away. "I want so much to help him, for everybody to be okay." Hannah looked up at her father. "I don't know what I'm supposed to do for Bran. I don't know how to fix this." "There's nothing you can do," Gina said. "He needs medical care, medication, time to heal. All you can do is be there. Just be there for him." "How can I when he's locked in that hospital room? He's all by himself in there. And they increased his dosage to control him, just like they drugged Grandpa. They medicate Brandon so he isn't a danger to himself or others," Gina said. "He needs his medication to recover. You have to help him understand that. He'll likely be in and out of the hospital many times." She took Hannah's hand in both hers, as if Hannah were family, a daughter. "But that's not the worst of it, is it? You feel like you have no control over what's going on." Hannah's cell buzzed as she leaned away from Gina to read a text. She responded to it before pocketing the phone. Then she stood and opened the front door. "Dad won't sign Bran out of that fucking hospital," she said to Gina. "Once Grandpa dies," Gina glanced up at Jesse as she spoke. "You're afraid your dad will leave?" Hannah turned to her father. "I know he will." Jessie held out a hand. "Hannah, you've got to understand," but Hannah didn't let him finish. She stepped outside and banged the door shut behind her. "You should follow her, talk to her," Gina said. Jesse shook his head, feeling the anger hot on his face. "I don't think so." "Listen, Jesse, you've got to pay much more attention to Hannah. She needs to know she still has a family. Bran isn't the only one suffering here. She acts like she doesn't want me around. She's hurt. You left her, remember? You'll have to work to regain her trust. Are we talking about Hannah or you?" Gina stood back, crossed her arms, and stared at him. Jesse nodded. "Okay, you're right. But how long will this go on for? When will Bran get better?" "You mean how long will you have to stay?" "I don't know. There's no way to tell. It could be years, right, before he recovers. Or never. There's still a very good chance Bran will recover, but yes, it could take years. Before Bran is released, you'll have to have a conversation with Bran's doctor to come up with a care plan for him at home. Jesse rubbed his chin. Are you willing to help out? He asked. I think you need to handle this one on your own. She glanced out the window. Hannah was striding towards the river. And Hannah has made it clear that she would rather not have me involved. She squeezed his hand. Go talk to her. Then she turned to leave. Can we meet up later? Jesse looked back at him from the doorway. We got a reality check today, Jesse. You're breaking things off? I'm cooling things down. Grant sees us. I'm not sure I'm ready to give everything up when I don't know what's waiting for me. Jesse stepped towards her. Please, Gina. Meet me later so we can talk this out. Gina shook her head. Your focus should be right here, right now, with your kids, not with me. I don't think I can do this again. Yes, you can. You have to. She hesitated, then kissed him on the lips, lingering a moment before pulling away. The eagle had abandoned the plastic pink flamingo on the shore. Hannah kicked it, sending it spinning into the water. It lobbed on the current, sliding downriver ahead of her as she strode to meet Alex. He marched up the path towards her. The ankles of his jeans were wet from wading across the shallows. As he reached her, he shouted, Jesus, Hannah, what the hell? I get a text from Gina saying you took Brandon to the river, that he nearly drowned. She's holding me responsible. Aren't you? You were the one who said that was the only way to save him. I said you needed to talk to the mystery. Well, I did. At least I thought I did. For a while I actually believed Bran was the mystery. He asked me to take him back home, to the river. He said he would release Bran. So you let him try to drown himself? No, I only took him to the river to let that thing go. We've got to make sure Bran's spirit is still here first. That he can get back, that we can revive him. You can't do this alone. Revive him? Do you hear yourself? You are asking me to drown my own brother. I'm not asking you to do anything. You came to me for help, remember? All I did was tell you what I know. He looked away as he rubbed his neck. In many ways it would be better to let things run their course. Allow the mystery to bring down the storm. He's here for a reason. All that is bullshit. Everything you told me, the story is bullshit. If you hadn't told Bran about the mystery and all that other crap, he wouldn't be sick like this. You know that's not true. Hannah waved a hand at the water in exasperation. He thinks he's some kind of spirit, for God's sake, and that he lives in the river. He is, and he does. Hannah, that boy in your house isn't your brother. Bran's soul is out here somewhere. If he hasn't already left. If he isn't already dead, you mean. Alex nodded. My brother is very much alive. He's sick, that's all. And he will get better. I won't let him end up like Mom. He will unless we help him. It may already be too late to do anything. Fuck, Hannah said under her breath. Then she told Alex, Dad is right. You need to stay away from our house. From Bran. She pointed a finger at him, and you need to stay the hell away from me. You don't mean that. Yes, I do. She turned heel and strode back upriver, where she reached the pasture path that led to her house. Hannah looked back. Alex was still standing where she left him. She held his gaze for a moment before she continued on her way.